So let's talk about the current state. What's going on right now? And, I love to start with the money. So Natalie, if you could tell us in this current market, how do incentives play and what role do they play in commercial real estate right now?
Yeah, today, absolutely. There's three things we're seeing at Incentifine in 2021. And it's all going to play towards where the future of real estate's going. So hint, hint. What we're seeing is first and foremost, COVID prevention. I can't tell you how many hospitals, schools, offices, you name the asset type, if it houses people at the end of the day, they're thinking about their HVAC systems, how to upgrade them for COVID prevention. We're here to provide cost savings for upgrading those HVAC systems to more energy efficient equipment. So that's kind of the first thing. Second thing we're seeing is that now that, we have rejoined as a nation the Paris Climate Agreement or Accord, you see a spike in corporations and companies now dedicating their real estate to what's called net zero by 2050. They're just going to green their assets more in an effort for climate mitigation, right? And that's sort of the last thing we're seeing in real estate is folks are realizing how much waste comes from buildings, the buildings we spend 90% of our time in. So they're saying, hold on a second, we're the ones affecting climate change. Absolutely. Is there something we can do about it? Yeah, you can make your building more energy efficient, water conserving. You can think about renewables and, surprise, the government will actually pay you to implement those pieces of equipment. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, you start with the money and things are being implemented and they'll pay you for it. So there's a lot of, in commercial real estate, it's like in flux. So Logan, talk to us, what's the future? We've seen a lot of co-working spaces pop up, but now, you see all the articles, you see a lot of analysts say, hey, co-working is dead. What's the current state? Is it going to survive or is it going to be like the foundation for the next thing?
Yeah, I'll take that question for Logan. So the co-working is like I mentioned at the beginning, is something that's always evolving. I mean, something that used to be called co-locating is now called co-working. And even within co-working models, you have various different types and fashions of how people approach co-working. I think you might even have models that you can't truly call co-working anymore because of all the elements that they provide kind of the people that are engaging in their environment. So I think maybe starting with the WeWork documentary might be one opportunity to kind of see what co-working might have started as and where the pitfalls are and where we can go from there. So truthfully, if I had the crystal ball, I'd be a lot richer than I am. So right now we're kind of gauging what the community is asking from us and what are people asking from their commercial real estate and trying to adapt.
Actually, yeah, I've been watching too much X-Men. I said Logan there. I got you, Alex. So thank you for that. So Bobby, talking more about real estate in its current state, even in the residential market, which bubbles up to commercial ultimately, is there a way that we can search for real estate more effectively? Can that be improved?
Yeah, it definitely can be improved. I think that the interesting thing is that we're dealing with a different consumer. When you look at the largest pool of buyers right now in residential real estate, it's millennials. And you know what? Millennials are different. They've changed a lot of industries prior to the real estate industry. You're talking about the largest, most educated, and most diverse generation in history. And so when it comes down to searching real estate, I want more information than just pictures or square footage, a lot size, and the school that it's zoned to. I now can live anywhere. And so with that being said, I want to know more about the area. Can you tell me about the subdivision? Can you tell me about, do people like yoga in this area? I like, I like jazz. And so people really now want to know what's happening around more what they call geo location, if you will, social, if you will, and to be able to understand what's happening around an area and then find a place to live within it. And so I think that's what we're seeing now, because we're in this, post pandemic, and we could live and be anywhere. So let's be where I love the things I love and like doing.
And with the things you love, and you talk about millennials, right? We work a little differently.
Yeah.
And so this question's for Rita, and thank you for that, Bobby. So the way that people work are different. How has the emergence of like the freelance market, the gig economy, and how is that changing the way businesses think and build their commercial real estate environment?
I would say dramatically. So if you think about before the pandemic, there were already over 60 million freelancers across the country. And that's a broad catch-all term, but it means anybody who has a business that is not tied to a place. So it's bakers and yoga instructors, it's marketing professionals, it's lawyers that don't keep an office anymore, 60 million nationwide. And if the pandemic has taught us anything, is that a whole lot more people than just those 60 million are perfectly capable of doing a really fantastic job empowering the economy without being tied to a specific space. So I don't see a future where there's no role for space. I think there's always going to be a real estate footprint there, that for convening, for meeting customers. There are some things that you just can't do without a place attached to it. But I think that commercial real estate holders are going to have to start thinking much more creatively about the kinds of traffic they're willing to bring into their space, so that they can invite in some of those activities from people who maybe only want space, a dozen times a month for specific purposes, and the rest of the time they're perfectly happy in a coffee shop or at home. What does it look like to be part of that evolving economy, so that we get rid of this narrative we have that Main Street and Amazon are at odds? They don't have to be. We just all have to get a little bit more creative. And I think the pandemic has shown us that it's a pivot point for everybody right now.
And it's not only a pivot point in the physical space, but it's also a pivot point when we talk about demographics. So this question's for Mark. When we talk about the current state and the demographics and some of the intentional communities and the education behind that, how are things evolving for minorities in this environment?
That's a great question, Alan. And, essentially with DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, everybody knows what's going on, with George Floyd, et cetera, et cetera. And so people are now beginning to see, there are cameras everywhere. People are now beginning to see that there is a disparity. There was redlining. You have kind of corporations coming in and taking over historically Black neighborhoods that are generally close to the city. And people are getting, like Bobby said, people are definitely getting educated, educating themselves, and there's more inclusion. And so that just means, more opportunity for individuals of color to be able to invest in and own either residential or commercial real estate.
Phenomenal. And I put these two gentlemen together because everything sounds better in a British accent. So this next question, Sebastian, talking about challenges, not only within and the current state of physical spaces. We talked about how demographics are changing, but what are some of the other challenges and opportunities in commercial real estate currently?
Yeah, so the pandemic really accelerated changes that are already happening in the background in how we live, work, and travel. So for example, people are switching from booking hotels to alternative accommodation, such as Airbnb, and that really accelerated with the pandemic as people wanted to avoid lots of people. Obviously, people are spending less time in the office or never going back. And so that means we're sort of no longer tied to a single location. And many also wanted to escape apartment communities and have a backyard. And also, I think it really gave people, people didn't want to be tied down as much. And so what that means, so I work particularly with multifamily apartment communities. A lot of them have been built over the last few years, and some have been struggling to rent out their own apartments. In the travel space, hotels are also struggling. And so I think they need to adapt to this sort of rapid change. Nobody expected things to move so quickly. And so, you know, out of the existential threat comes opportunity, I think.
Mhm.